Enter the hall, worm. Dharma has received your messages, and we will be answering them forthwith. We will be... Don't ignore the sex sounds. We're answering your questions.
Welcome to Gom Jabbar, your guide to the iconic world of Dune. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in the sandy depths of this vast universe, from Frank Herbert's groundbreaking novels to the adaptations on film and TV. My name's Abu.
My name is Leo.
And Leo, we're going to be pausing our book club, as we like to do, to take everything in for a moment, and to answer questions from our listeners as they read along with us on our journey through Chapter House Dune, the final book by Frank Herbert.
Indeed. Well, let's take care of our housekeeping before we get into the questions that you all asked us. And as usual, today's episode will contain no spoilers beyond the pages and books we've covered thus far. So at this point, that's all of Frank's books except the last and up to the chapter we've assigned. So if you've heard all of our book club episodes so far, you are safe to listen today.
That's right. And of course, up top, a huge shout out to our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons, Daniel Dion, Seth Redden Greer, Brad Hutchins, Kevin Mahanram, and Roger Young. Woo! Woo!
Damn.
No questions from any of them, though. But, you know, no judgment. No,
incredibly
no judgment
generous, not at all inquisitive. They're like, hey, you've got our gratitude, and we have no questions for you. This is fine.
That's right. That's right. We thank you all from the bottom of our hearts, but our gratitude and our thank yous also extend beyond our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons to all of our patrons, actually, at every level, who truly build the foundation upon which this show runs, upon which we pay our bills and pay our team and get this thing done week in and week out. So we thank you so much.
Yo, backs for sure. And hey, if you are not currently in a place to be a supporter on Patreon, don't forget, there is a one-time tip link in the show notes, so you can check that out. You can kind of buy us a spice coffee, as it were, and it's another great way to show your appreciation, and every little bit helps, because, again, we are really a scrappy operation here, and helps keep the lights on. Throughout this recording, you might notice the light to my left flickering. That's what I'm talking about. Well, okay, game plan for today's episode. Today is a mailbag episode. So we have your questions and a few that we've pulled from the depths of the internet, as well as a couple of observations people have shared with us, and we're here to respond to them. So we're going to be starting the episode focusing on Chapter House Dune, the book that we're currently working through. Then we're going to expand our view a little bit more to like broadly Dune as an IP.
That's right.
And finally, we will wrap up on a couple of off-topic fun questions.
That's right.
Which kind of implies that the on-topic questions are not fun, which is not the case. Everything's fun. It's all
Everything's fun. We're all having fun.
We're all having fun. The doors are locked. You're not allowed to leave. But before we get into it, before you check to see if the doors are actually locked, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. You can't. Doors are locked. We'll be right back with your questions right after this.
Welcome back, folks. Hope you're not too scared that the doors are locked. Let's do it. Let's jump into this mailbag episode. Let's start today with our first question. This one came from the horrible, dark, and scary place known as Reddit.
Love it. Great place.
From Reddit user Last Artist. Last Artist asked, quote, "Is Chapter House the same planet as Wallach 9? I'm not a huge fan of the same planets being reused. I understand and do appreciate Gamu being a reformed Giedi Prime, but it makes the universe of Dune a tad bit smaller when we're 6 books in and only really have like 6 planets of importance in the Imperium." End quote.
Man, what a good question. Also because I read this, it was in the script, I was like, is Chapter House the same as well? Oh my God, is it?
Right.
And there's like a real moment of like,
had like a double take moment as well, where I was like,
is it? And the answer is no, it's not. But it's a great point because, again, there are times when it is worth repeating that these planets are the same or are not the same.
Yeah, definitely. So there's two pieces of evidence. We came with receipts, folks. This Chapter House planet where Odrade and Belanda and all of our lovely characters is not the same planet as Wallach 9 from the previous books. And there's two supporting facts here that make this pretty much lock and key pretty clear. Supporting fact number one is that Chapter House, the planet, is referenced by Odrade and others throughout Heretics and in Chapter House as their home base for the last 1500-ish years. So, based on that timeline alone, it seems like this is a planet that the Sisterhood relocated to after the fall of the God Emperor, because remember, there's a huge time gap between the fourth book and the fifth book. And so this is probably a planet, kind of connecting dots here and assuming things, but this is probably a planet the Sisterhood created as a home base as a result of the scattering and the famine times and the disruption in the Imperium caused by Leto II's death around 1500 years ago. Evidence number two, this one pretty much seals the deal.
Yeah.
A little bit later in the book, this is not a huge spoiler. I'm going to share a quote totally out of context, but a little bit further in the book than where we are now in the book club, Great Honored Madre Dama makes reference, actually, direct reference to the destruction and or capture of literally Wallach 9 among other notable planets that you may recognize. Quote, "She fell into a semi-reverie, still alert to the sounds behind her, but relishing the evidence of new victories that had been displayed to her this morning. She liked to roll the names of captive planets silently on her tongue. Wallach, Cronin, Rional, Ekaz, Bella Tegus, Gamu, Gamont, Niche." End quote.
Yeah, Gamont rolling across the tongue leaves a taste for sure. I think it's worth noting that Chapter House is a term that the Bene Gesserit use to refer to their headquarter planet, and that will be given to different planets throughout the cosmos. Wallach 9 may have been Chapter House at one point, but
True.
Now Chapter House is a different planet, and we're only referring to it as Chapter House. So I think that's worth noting as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's a great question. It's definitely had me checking my own certainty. I was like, oh, they're different. Wait, why do I think that? Oh, no. Yeah. So super glad you found these receipts.
And beyond that, I also wanted to just very quickly comment on Last Artist's criticism that sequels can often shrink their universes when they begin to cling to popular characters or locations and stop taking risks or creative leaps, which I, for one, fully agree with. I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but Star Wars is a property that is extremely guilty of this, especially since the Disney era. And I understand the feeling that 6 books into the Dune universe, you might be going, why the fuck am I still on Giddy Prime?
Yeah.
But I do want to push back on the criticism from Last Artist a little bit. I do think that when we get into Heretics by book number 5, Frank is taking some huge leaps. He is dramatically shifting the perspective of the entire story away from the Atreides to the Bene Gesserit in order that has been shrouded in mystery to us, the reader, for 4 books now, which I think is a dramatic leap of faith. And also, I mean, literally, Arrakis gets blown up at the end of Heretics. So if that's not leaving a popular planet behind, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
I agree that geographically we're still within the Imperium. Yes, we're still sort of hovering the same handful of planets we've been hearing about for 6 books now. But I think when it comes to the storytelling and world building, Frank is genuinely not holding back and truly going out on a limb in some cases. And that's what makes these latter books pretty exciting. That in some ways they are nothing like the first couple of books.
Yeah, I agree on both accounts. We've talked about how Mo Hayam as Jessica's mother is just a bad choice overall. And again, it's kind of iffy on where that falls exactly, because again, Tanidia Naris is Jessica's mother, and that seems to be a different person and not Mo Hayam and whatever. But I also agree that Frank does use it to great effect, like saying, hey, you all know Paul Atreides, hero from the first book. Well, he's actually Space Hitler. Like he does a good job.
Yeah.
And to your point about like, yeah, there are still Atreides in Heretics. We have Odrade Atreides, but we are re-examining what does it mean to be Atreides this far down the line? What is the baggage that comes with it? And it's a meaningful carrying forward of the name and the family rather than just like, oh, it turns out she's a Skywalker. And it's like, well, that comes with all of the things that it comes with. I'll also point out that, like, I think if Frank is building the world the way that the history books have been written, you look at like Western history books and it's just full of Spain, England, now the United States, Germany, these like big country names. And how often are you seeing like Belarus in the history textbooks as like a big character? And I think that's another thing to keep in mind is like, it kind of makes sense that if you are basing the planets around the like great houses, the houses major, you have those same planets are still active because they are the most influential, most affluent, they are going to be the ones. Also, we're dealing with a universe that has only so many habitable planets. And anyway, great call out, great question, and agreed on the criticism. And we think that for what it's worth, Frank dodges it a little bit, or at least uses it to good effect at times.
Yeah, I agree. I think Frank's doing a good job.
Well, speaking of familiar planets, we have a question from patron named Planet ECAS. Spectacular segue there.
This patron's been captured by the honored Matre based on this quote we just read.
Just recently. My God, you doing okay?
Are you okay?
Is your retired athletic sex mommy treating you well? I hope so. Keep the futars out. Well, ECAS asks, how are Shiana and Duncan communicating? We know they have a sign language, I think, but how are they interacting and scheming? She's in the desert, and he's on the no ship. There doesn't appear to be any video communication, and even if there were, the sisterhood would notice something. Yeah, so they're not on like FaceTimes. She's like, the reception sucks out here at the desert. He's like, I'm getting every
you're
third
on mute.
word.
Duncan, you're on mute.
You're muted.
I mean, it doesn't matter. We're hand signing, but you're still on mute.
It's suspicious as fuck if we're on mute and still having a conversation. That's crazy. No, it's a great question. And because we also haven't yet gotten to a chapter where Shiana and Duncan we don't see them interacting yet.
Yeah, right.
We are missing some of these data points, but there are a couple of things to keep in mind. And the first thing to keep in mind is something that keeps catching me off guard as we read the book. We've spanned about a decade on this planet. Like, they have been on the planet for a fucking minute. And it's really easy to forget that. So between the first chapter and where we are right now as we've paused, it's about 10 years. Mm-hmm. So it's a safe assumption to say, although Shiana, many of her chapters have been on the edge of the desert, that doesn't mean she's always there. And there are plenty of times where she's maybe coming back to the headquarters, maybe she's coming back to the no ship, maybe she's still got her roller bag on the no ship that she comes back to, like, swap out garments or whatever. That for sure they've had time for her to come back to the no ship and meet him face to face. Now, given how important Shiana is to the sisterhood at large, it's also pretty reasonable to say, hey, she's a piece of Odrade's plans, whatever they are. Odrade probably is going to give her access to basically anything that could help her develop, including perhaps one of the most important characters in all of Dune. It's like, hey, he's the main character. You should interact with him sometimes. So not weird to imagine that is the case.
Yeah.
I also wanted to point out that I think because they came to the planet together, I think the broader Bene Gesserit would probably be pretty interested in getting them together to see if she elicits any new or interesting behavior from Duncan, this like deeply important character. Both of them are very important to the Bene Gesserit, and with comm eyes everywhere, I can imagine Belanda and the other council members being like, yeah, let's let them meet so long as we can record everything and get more data out of this.
Completely. And if you'll recall, in Heretics, like, the original plan was for Duncan and Shiana to be paired together. Right? That was like part of Taraza's plan that never ended up happening. And so I think it is a safe assumption for us to make that sometime in the last 10 years that these characters have been spending on this planet, on Chapter House, Shiana and Duncan have had face-to-face meetings. And so that is where they've presumably begun their scheming and developed a secret signing language to each other to undermine the sisterhood. Yeah. That 10-year gap really catches you off guard because it is just like one chapter and you miss it.
Every other fucking page I'm caught off guard. And it's a great point that like there is probably also an active plan D or plan E where they are like, yeah, maybe we can still get him to mate with Shiana because Shiana's got important genes. She can control sandworms. Sure would be nice for her to give a child to the Bene Gesserit with all of Duncan's superpowers and buffs. I imagine they are also kind of like hoping that whatever lock Duncan and Marbella have on each other loosens for an afternoon so that he can get away and be like, she's pretty hot too, I guess.
Tamalaine keeps setting up meet cutes for Duncan and Shiana to happen, you know? She's coming up with all these like Netflix holiday movie meet cute moments.
But they're all like generationally like out of sync with the young generation because she's super old. So it's always like, oh, a love letter with a heart. Duncan's like, what the fuck? It's handwritten by Quill? I don't speak that language.
It's also signed No Cap. I don't know what that means.
Hello, fellow child. That's not how we talk to each other. That's so weird.
Yeah. A great question, though, Ekaz. Thank you for submitting that one because it's true. So far in the book, we have yet to witness a moment of these two characters actually speaking face to face. Okay, moving on. Next up, we have a question from listener Nate Hyde. Nate asks, quote, I know we've only just met the Space Jews, but it seems to me that within the context of the Dune universe, something like complete cover would be presented very negatively. It seems to me that the hiding/conflict avoidance associated with complete cover is the opposite of Amtal, and as such, I would have expected the Space Jews to be portrayed more negatively. Shouldn't the Bene Gesserit be disgusted by this and the rot to which such a closed social system would generate? End quote.
Yeah, really great question, Nate. I think, there's such a long conversation to be had about the hidden Jews coming up in this last book of Frank Herbert's. Definitely one of the more confounding choices that he made. And one of the first questions we would ask him if we could grab him for an afternoon chat.
Yeah.
We are absolutely going to be doing a dedicated episode about the hidden Jews after we finish the book club and we have the full perspective of Dune Chapter House. But for today, we just wanted to quickly address your specific questions and comments.
That's right. And I think a useful place to begin for us is to refresh ourselves on the definition of Amtal, because it's been a bit. So according to the terminology of the Imperium, that glossary of terms at the end of the first book, written by Frank Herbert, Amtal is defined as, quote, a common rule on primitive worlds under which something is tested to determine its limits or defects. End quote.
Right.
Pushing something to the breaking point and just beyond to see whether it survives or breaks. That is Amtal in essence. And from the first book, we know that this is a Fremen concept that is based on their culture of survival in the deep desert, that harsh lifestyle that the Fremen have lived for generations on Dune. If you'll recall, the first time we actually even hear the word Amtal is from Jameis, when he invokes the rule of Amtal to challenge Paul Atreides to that fateful duel.
Yeah.
So this is something I would actually push back on in regards to Nate's question. I actually don't think that Amtal is necessarily a Bene Gesserit worldview. I don't think they look at the universe or their plans through that same lens in the way that the Fremen sort of looked at life. Amtal, push this thing to the brink. Is it worthy of survival or will it break? I don't think that's how the Bene Gesserit operate, at least not entirely as an organization. And so I don't think it's an idea that they would apply to a group like the Hidden Jews that we meet in this book. That having been said, I do think there's a larger conversation to be had, and you could make the argument that the idea of complete cover does feel like a stagnant way to live, right? It does feel in some ways opposed to the big ideas and themes in this whole series about embracing chaos, embracing the new, changing, evolving, not becoming stagnant and still. The complete cover seems to imply that the hidden Jews have stuck to their ways for over 10,000 years and have thus survived to reappear here in the 6th book. That is a huge conversation, certainly something we'll revisit in a full episode. But I do understand Nate's criticism. I don't know that it applies to the Bene Gesserit worldview, but I do think thematically there is an argument to be made about some potential thematic contradictions here.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting, like, when we're talking about how it's presented, according to the book, Frank does have very strong beliefs about stagnation as this ultimate threat to humanity and to individuals and to whatever. But something to keep in mind, the complete cover of the Jews has worked. They've outlived so many cultures and so many fucking religions, and so they are there. They have succeeded in a way that no one else has. And so the resiliency, the fact that Frank painted a universe where tens of thousands of years from now, Jewish people will be alive and well, is like, that is part of the story, undeniably. Like, they are there.
Correct. Yep.
Another piece of this is we don't know yet, because we haven't finished the book. We don't know. They might not be a part of the solution that humanity needs to move forward. So where Frank might be condemning their stagnation implicitly because they are not trying to find a new solution that's going to say blah, 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 blah. Like, sure, that's fair, but I think that's true for almost every faction in Dune that's fallen into these kind of dogmatic ways, which the Bene Gesserit are also super fucking guilty of, even as they kind of thump their Bibles and say, we know that we're doing the right thing. So I think the way that the Jews are represented in the book is a deeply complex issue, and that's why we're going to dedicate a whole episode to it. I have sought out Jewish voices on both sides of the conversation, some who say this is literally anti-Semitic, and some that say this gave me hope for the future of Judaism. It's like, it's a spectrum of takes, and we're going to do our best to represent that when we get to that conversation. But I think, to your question, Nate, the fact that Amtal is such a prominent concept as we've followed characters who are Fremen and are applying this Fremen principle to the universe, I don't think that it necessarily casts it in a judgmental or negative light, just because they don't necessarily do the same thing. Because again, neither too does so many of the institutions in the universe. So just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to that point, like the Jewish people, the Bene Gesserit also have survived for tens of thousands of years in this universe by operating in the shadows, right? By committing to a certain dogma, to a certain set of rules. So they too have their own dogma. They too have their own rot at their core that we are only now here in Heretics and Chapter House beginning to recognize through characters like Taraza and Odrade and Teg, our quote-unquote heretics, right? These are the characters that are beginning to push back on some of this rot that clearly has seeped its way deeply into the sisterhood.
Yeah.
And so I think it is interesting that here in these latter books is also when we're introduced to another secret organization that has also survived just as long as the Bene Gesserit has, using similar techniques.
Man, we could probably talk about that for like 2-3 hours.
Yeah.
So
damn, Nate. You temptress, you motherfucking temptress. You're like, y'all want to do that Hidden Jews episode now, today?
Ticket.
Or
showing a bit of ankle, Nate. Damn.
Well, hopefully we addressed some of Nate's thoughts there. Definitely, as we're making clear, we're putting a pin in a lot of other more complex and nuanced conversations about the Hidden Jews. Again, as we've promised many times now, we will return to these conversations once we have finished the book and have a fuller picture of the Hidden Jews' place in the Dune universe.
Indeed. Well, up next, we have a keen observation, a meticulous little moment
I like this.
Called out by Ryan Fust. Ryan writes, quote, "In Heretics, there's a line in one of the early chapters that talks about an ornithopter landing and smelling of spent thopter fuel.
Oh.
In my opinion, this means one of two things. One, since Heretics is 5,000 years after Dune, could technology have simply evolved to the point where they don't need the muscles anymore? With the Ixian and Tleilaxu inventions being more accepted by this point, I could see them switching over to a mechanical engine rather than a biological one. 2. The Thopters have always been mechanically driven, but it was never officially established until Frank wrote that down in Heretics, contradicting the encyclopedia. I know this is a ridiculous detail to obsess over, but I'm certain that I turned to the right place for this sort of thing. Please let me know what you guys think. End quote. We think you came to the exact right fucking place.
You're at
Ryan.
the right door. Welcome
God
in.
damn. We are all about the one-line fucking call-outs.
I love it. What a great catch from Ryan. Honestly, I didn't notice this one line at all about the Thopters. So I'm glad that Ryan pulled it and emailed us about it. And I actually, I don't have much to add here. I actually think the two theories that Ryan has put forward about how to explain this Thopter fuel line from Heretics totally makes sense to me. And in fact, if I had to pick between the two of them, I kind of lean a little bit more toward theory number one. I like to think that it is just an evolution of ornithopter technology over thousands of years, which we've seen happen to much of the technology in the Dune universe. We've seen, for example, groups like the Tleilaxu or the Ixians evolve their tech, certainly thanks to pressure by the God Emperor and the iron-fisted, iron-flippered, whatever control he had on the spice. These organizations have had to do things like create their own artificial melange, finally crack that code. Yeah. That now exists here in books 5 and 6. Guild navigators are a thing of the past because we have things like no ships and mechanical drives and pseudo computers that can drive the highliners. And so we are seeing technology evolve and change from the way we knew it in the early Dune books. And I like to imagine ornithopters aren't exempt from that. Maybe at one point they were heart muscles, and now they just aren't. Technology has evolved beyond that. And I think in a larger sense, now that we're in books 5 and 6, it does feel to me personally more and more like the Butlerian prohibitions and the jihad is like so long ago now.
Yeah.
That these rules are just kind of like openly ignored suggestions now, rather than hard and fast rules that are actually enforced by anybody.
Yeah, I agree. I think the heart muscles have always been kind of one of those stretchy bits of canonicity where like we really like the idea. It's really fun and out there and crazy. But like I just did a quick search in Dune. There's multiple mentions. At one point, Leto is hovering the ornithopter, dilly-dallying. Halleck says, "You waste fuel here, sire."
Exactly.
Fuel.
Yep.
Okay, what is that? Later in the Fremen, there are fabrics and rugs to make. Fuel cells to charge. Okay, so there are fuel cells that charge. Maybe these are food for the heart mollusks. I don't know. I think at a certain point, I like the pattern of like we had an organic driven thing and then figured out a mechanical replacement for that. Maybe you slap the year 10,395 model ornithopter and you go, this one's got 9 heart mollusks power in the engine. It's so sick. And you go,
could fit so many heart mollusks in
so
this
many
baby.
fucking heart mollusks in the trunk of this baby. And again, it's like you talk about horsepower in your Ford. It's like there aren't horses inside the Fords, folks. That's just a reference to where they came from. So I like the idea of like biological to mechanical. Again, super debatable if the biological was ever fucking involved because again,
true. Very true.
There, as we even talked about it in so many episodes ago, there were some big questions that we didn't have answers to. So I think what I would like to say is my personal headcanon is that heart mollusks were involved in some models of ornithopters,
right? And
that every ornithopter had some sort of mixed method propulsion. So even if you had a heart ornithopter, you're like running a hybrid, like a Prius.
Yeah.
And you're like, we got a steep hill to go up. Let's turn on the afterjets. Let's get up that hill. And then we can go back to gliding on our like organic engine. I think that is probably the most likely, just
I agree.
On a sense, like balancing the evidence that we have.
Yeah. That's my headcanon as well.
Yeah, I think that leaves room for like the fuel and the smell and the mechanical,
Yeah.
but it also allows for those early models to be really fucking wacky and weird.
Yeah,
you know,
I know. It's just such a fun idea. I don't want to let the mollusks go. You know,
you don't. They're hard. They're right there. They're they're big.
They've
squishy
captured
boys.
my heart, certainly.
Yeah, they're so thick. They're so juicy. That's great.
Hello. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing that observation with us and catching that line in Heretics. It's just a single throwaway line. I went back and fact checked. I was like, is Ryan lying to us?
Yeah.
Ryan is not lying to us. This line does exist in Heretics. So thank you so much for your email and for calling out this tiny little detail. And welcome to the club that loves to obsess over tiny little details and throwaway lines. You're in the right place. All right, so that wraps up the first section of today's mailbag, the questions that were focused on Heretics and Chapter House, these latter books that we're currently covering on the book club. Let's take a break, but folks, don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we're going to widen our view and answer some of your lovely questions about the wider Dune universe and talk about the rest of this IP that we love so much. So hang tight, we'll be right back. We'll see you in a minute with some more mailbag questions.
Welcome back, everybody. Oh, I hope you enjoyed your break. Up next, we have one from Patron Rudy. And Rudy asks, quote, how does local government actually work in the Dune universe?
Ooh.
I'm curious how Herbert imagined justice and order functioning on the ground in such a feudal, planet-spanning empire. We know the Emperor and the Lance Rat handle the grand politics of the Imperium, and each great house rules its planet as a fiefdom, like House Atreides with Arrakis. But what about the day-to-day governance? A duke like Leto can't possibly settle every civil dispute or local issue himself. Are there judges, magistrates, or administrators running things at the city or regional level? Do planets have any kind of internal bureaucracy, or does everything just flow down the noble hierarchy? And at a bigger scale, is there any kind of imperial constitution or shared legal framework that all houses must follow? Or does each world simply govern how its ruling family sees fit? End quote.
Wow.
And such begins the next 16 hours of our conversation as we break down every little piece. Man, Rudy, oh, what a good question.
Yeah.
We here at Gamjabar, having spent 5 years, 6 years talking about Dune, we love where your head's at. This is the kind of thing that we really nerd out about.
This is good shit. I like where Rudy's head's at.
Hot shit, Rudy. You're serving up some hot shit.
I also like that Rudy has followed the long-held Gamjabar tradition of sneaking in like 4 questions into one question.
If I had to ask one question, here's my 1 and 6 follow-ups.
I love it.
So to address your question partially, Rudy, we're going to take a look at some examples that might help clear things up a little bit. Mm-hmm. I will caveat all of this by saying there is a lot of information to parse through. A lot of it is from the Dune Encyclopedia. There is a Dune Encyclopedia article called Imperial Administration, which is a little bit about what you're talking about, and it's an insane article. I mean, we could probably do 2 episodes about that alone.
Yeah.
But what I'll also say is, broadly, this is the sort of thing that would probably take, to give you a truly comprehensive answer, probably would have taken 10, 15 hours worth of like research and picking through the books. So we probably missed things. Do not hesitate to send us an email if you find some little detail somewhere. We will very happily amend our statements. So let us know what we missed. But with that Imperium-sized caveat out of the way, let's look at some examples.
Yes, let's dive in. So let's start by looking at the universe before Paul came in and fucked everything up, basically.
Right. I think after that, rules are out the window.
Yes.
New Imperium, and then Leto takes over.
Yeah, then there's a God Emperor for 3,500 years. Like, so much stuff gets blown up once the Atreides are in power that we're just going to look at the Carino timeline at the moment. And during the Carino rule, during, the 10,000-ish rule of House Carino, at the top, we had, of course, the Emperor, right? And this was whatever house currently sat on the Golden Lion throne. And if you look at the long history of the Imperium, there's a timeline in the encyclopedia. For the most part, outside of like a couple of one-off hiccups, the house on the throne was the Carinos.
Yeah.
They ruled for nearly 10,000 straight years, which is a pretty incredible feat.
I think they're also, even the ones who are not by name Carino are like Carino by marriage. Right. And it's like...
others who married in ended up on the throne temporarily, et cetera,
shameful.
Et cetera.
Get them out of here. What are they doing here? Not Carino? Ill.
So that's the top of the pile. That's the top of the pyramid.
Right.
The emperor and the emperor's house in charge. Beneath that, in the bureaucracy, you then have your houses major.
Right.
You have people like Duke Leto, ever heard of him? You have people like Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, who are in charge of these major houses, these major power players within the imperial political system. And
right.
These are the folks we hear about that have titles like Baron, Count, Duke. And these are the folks who usually are ruling either one entire planet or, in some cases, multiple planets.
Right.
Have different levels of authority over multiple planets.
Right.
Now, we agree with Rudy that Duke Leto, the head of a house major, is probably not dealing with like city level administration stuff, right? Where do we put the new stop sign? We 3D printed our new stop sign. Duke, where do we put it?
Holy shit, Leto's outside. He has opinions. Oh my God.
That is probably not happening, right? Leto's got other bigger things to worry about than where to place the latest stop sign or whatever. So responsibilities like that are delegated. Those regional responsibilities are delegated down.
Yeah.
And so when we move down the ladder below these houses major, below people like Duke Leto and the Baron Vladimir, we have, of course, the houses minor.
Yeah.
The houses minor get a number of mentions throughout the books as well. And the terminology of the Imperium actually defines these houses minor as, quote, a planet-bound entrepreneur class, end quote.
That's huge because I make the mistake frequently internally of thinking as houses major being like the big players and then houses minor being the same thing but not as influential. That is not the case. Yeah. Houses minor are planet bound and are controlling regions.
Yes.
I think there are a couple of houses minor that do control a planet, but it's like a planet within a system governed by a house major.
Exactly.
It is actually a subdivision. It is a subsidiary, and they are almost always directly adhering to a house major as like you are the governing body that we report to.
Yes, exactly. That's a great point, Leo. That delineation is important. And in fact, a quote from Dune reinforces this idea by describing a house minor, for example, as someone who, quote, controlled the interior trade of Arrakis, end quote. So that's like an example of the type of responsibilities a house minor might have within this bureaucratic system.
Yeah. So we're talking about Arrakis, key planet of the Imperium, under fief partial to Baron Harkonnen for many years, for 75 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. But even the internal trade of that planet and the local disputes and criminal justice system and whatever they've got going on being handled by not even House Harkonnen. This is Alphabet and Google, right? You've got the different levels of decision making and the different board of executives and the different, it's kind of crazy to think about. And I think that's also where at the dinner banquet where Leto and Jessica are hosting all of these officiaries, many of them are probably house minor lords and ladies who are themselves the ones who are making, like, handling court issues and stuff like that. Yeah. And that's why they're invited to the palace to meet with the now head of the planet.
Right. Their new boss, effectively, right?
Yeah.
Like, really nothing for them has changed. They're going to continue to manage what they've always managed and have their own little bubbles of power and responsibility. But now they got to go get dinner with the new head honcho, right? Vlad is gone, and now this guy named Leto is here. We got to go get dinner with him.
There's another on-site fucking meeting. I got to travel for work. They're not even expensing. I don't know.
I'm going into the office this week for an all-hands meeting, and I hate it. Like, I'm going to a dinner banquet. It's boring. This actually, I would say, is why we love the dinner banquet so much. Like, it is such an important scene in the first book for just understanding this universe.
Yeah.
So much is jam-packed into that scene. Such a good chapter.
Yeah. And I'll also say that, like, more broadly, as I was, like, thinking about it, but also doing some targeted word searches and just trying to, like, check my knowledge,
Yeah.
it is worth noting that there are multiple references in addition to the houses minor, right? So the houses minor are still political entities. There are also then like career politicians and career roles that exist, like governors. And there are planetary governors that are mentioned multiple times. In fact, Gurney Halleck is made the planetary governor of, I think, Caladan, maybe Arrakis.
Right.
Someone is made the planetary governor of, I can't fucking, and maybe it's Stilgar. I don't know. Point is, there are planetary governors, but then there are also regional governors. So even within houses major and houses minor, they are delegating officials to handle local rule and the sort of like regional disputes that might pop up. So again, I will reference the Imperial Administration entry in the Dune Encyclopedia is fucking bonkers. If you want to get into the nitty, it's like talking about, you know, financial disputes versus legal disputes and which goes to which. And it's this like crazy breakdown. This is a quote that somewhat addresses this from that entry. Quote, provincial governors combined in their persons the military, judicial, financial, and administrative authority of the province. Since no individual could hope to master all these aspects of responsibility, governors were provided with secretaries whose expertise lay in each of these categories. These secretaries presided over large offices of civil servants who dealt only with issues in their area of competence. End quote.
Yep.
Just in that paragraph, we have the provincial governor, who's already like multiple steps down the hierarchical order, who then has a secretary of judicial, like a judicial secretary, who then themselves has a, quote, large office of civil servants. So this is nitty-gritty, boring bullshit.
And I love it.
And I love it. It's my favorite part of fucking universes.
Fear is the mind killer. Get that out of here. Tell me more about the secretaries.
Who's filing the paperwork? Do they have stationery? I want to know. Redulian stationery? Sick. What's their logo?
Local government.
Local government. Oh my God. Also, I just watched like all of the I had a 14-hour flight to China. I watched all of the John Wick movies.
Whoa.
And they're great. I'd seen I think 3 of them, and I hadn't seen the last one. I hadn't seen Ballerina.
Yes.
But along these lines, I'm like, tell me more about the fucking doctors, dude. Tell me about the hotels, the like treaties around where you can and can't do business. I'm like, that shit's so good.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Oh, it's maybe this is a sign of getting older, but I'm like, okay, yeah, the flamethrower duel, that's cool. But I do want to know more about the economics of those gold coins. Like, who's smithing them? Are there different ones? Who's on the gold? Oh, I'm so curious.
Right. How do the larger macroeconomic effects of the global economy affect the coin minting process?
Yeah. Are these like NFTs totally separate from the global economy? Or are they like, they're not part of the blockchain? Clearly, you got physical, you know. Clearly,
we have a type when it comes to world building, and it's this, whatever this is happening.
It's whatever you've kicked off, Rudy. So thank you.
Wow. So again, this definitely needs to be like its own whole episode probably, but in our attempts to respond to Rudy's lovely in-depth email here, in short, Dune is a universe of plans within plans,
right?
And it's clear it's also a universe of delegation within delegation within delegation all the way down.
Yeah.
And so really you have this structure where like the emperor is at the top of like countless rulers and planets and secretaries and assistants and civil servants. And truly, it takes a village to run a galactic empire.
Yeah, good thing there are trillions and trillions of villages. One last note we wanted to throw out, because part of your question, Rudy, was also about this like shared framework and constitution that every house must follow. Nothing definitive, but I would say we don't get a sense that there is. It seems like the emperor is basically making sure that people are paying their taxes and not disobeying the Great Convention, but otherwise you can kind of do whatever the fuck you want.
Right.
It's fine. Point in case, House Harkonnen, their whole fucking economy is on the back of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, House Atreides doesn't seem to use slavery. So how do those two houses, which are effectively the same, how do they have such different economies if there were some sort of like global memorandum saying you have to do things this way? It doesn't seem likely.
Yeah.
Another thing that's worth pointing out, as I was researching this, I actually Googled, this was early, like yesterday, I was like, Duke versus Baron? Like, are those even the same type of rule?
Oh,
and
okay.
They are within the same political system, but Dukes are higher up. Barons are one of the lowest, and Dukes are one of the highest. But I say that Baron Harkonnen is in no way less powerful politically than Leto Atreides.
No.
If anything, House Atreides is kind of on a backwater planet. He's popular, he's a threat to the Emperor, but he's not necessarily more influential because he's a Duke. I get the impression that every House Major has their own titles and their own traditions and their own, like, all of that shit. Counts, Viscounts, all of that shit varies planet to planet, house to house, and will be carried with that House Major wherever they go.
Yeah.
And it's not standardized by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. I like to think of it as like that Houses Major are like countries.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, one country's constitution does not apply, obviously, to another country's constitution. They maybe operate differently within different rule sets. But I guess, like, think EU, right? There maybe is, like, general, broader guidelines that these countries have agreed to in order to smooth over some of the bumps of working together, like trade and commerce and, you know, judicial proceedings, like how to extradite criminals that maybe escape from my planet to yours. Maybe there are broader agreements at the sort of emperor level, great convention level.
Universal currency. They all use
universal
Solaris.
Currency. Everybody uses Solari, right? At some
Gallic,
point, someone had to agree
language.
to that. Gallic, the language. So I think the closest parallel on planet Earth we can make right now is probably like the EU and then the nations, the states that have agreed to participate in the EU.
That's a great point.
It is interesting to consider what red tape might exist in the Imperium, you know? Like, I got to go through this fucking bureaucratic process because this court case from forever ago that the Baron Vladimir caused.
I need extra visas to travel to Gamu, and I need like a VPN when I'm connecting to their internet. It's so annoying.
Look, I never let my Gamont visa expire, though. I'm on top of that shit.
Every chance I get, I renew. Mine's expiring in 10 years. Still makes me antsy. I'm going to renew for another 20.
It's too close for comfort, you know?
Close for what? I can't not go to the pleasure district. So what are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
It's called mental health.
Great question, Rudy. Thank you so much for letting us geek out about this stuff. Clearly, we're very nerdy and excited to talk about these things.
My favorite.
And again, this potentially is an idea we're going to keep in our back pocket, an episode we're going to keep in our back pocket, because certainly there's much more to say here and a lot more fun sort of like theory crafting, filling in the lines, but also like a lot of lore to dig into.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next question. This is from patron Len Leak. Len asks, quote, I appreciate Dune being more sci-fi than fantasy. That almost everything supernatural in Dune has a scientific explanation appeals to me. I am ignoring books 5 and 6 in this regard.
Sure.
This seems to have been by design, per Frank Herbert. However, there is one aspect of Dune that I think ignores this sensibility. The transfer of memory from a dying Bene Gesserit mother to another, i.e., when Jessica drinks the water of life and absorbs the memories of the Fremen.
Sure.
This seems, to me, to be the sole aspect of Dune that has no quote-unquote scientific or natural explanation. Am I wrong? I would love to be wrong. End quote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great question. Yeah.
There's, as usual, a lot to unpack with this question as well. So really appreciate you, Len, writing to us about this. And we, on the podcast, have talked many times about how fun it is in Dune that there is an in-universe and somewhat logical, scientific-ish explanation for some of the, like, magic type abilities we see people do, you know?
Yeah.
We have people like Mentats or the Bene Gesserit or Face Dancers doing like supernatural, superhuman things.
Yeah.
But there are explanations that we can point to, and those explanations, based off of the science we currently have today, could be possible, right?
Yeah.
If you sort of extrapolate it out 20,000 years later.
You see Jim Carrey do his Clint Eastwood impression, and then you just say, give him another 20,000 years to practice. He could become fucking anything.
We're on to you, Jim!
We're on to you, Jim. He's a face dancer. We know it. We called it 5 years ago. It's still true. Don't turn your back on Jim Carrey. That's all we're saying. We love him to death. He's a national treasure.
He is indeed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And look, I think Len is also correct in sort of having to ignore books 5 and 6, Heretics and Chapter House here in this regard. Because, like 5 and 6 is where perhaps we start to really stretch some believability. You know, we literally have like superhuman Teg moving faster than the eye can see with his superhuman abilities, and also eating the biggest meal ever, the calorie deficit.
It's like Sonic the Hedgehog rules. Like he has to eat chili dogs to refuel his hyperspeed, and it's like, that's Teg. But it's and there's no even the Honored Matre's like crazy speed is described as this like insect-like responsive movement.
Yes,
and that's cool. That's basically scientific. Teg moving nearly the speed of sound.
Zero explanation.
It's like, because he's really tall. What do you want from us?
He's really tall and handsome. That's the only explanation I need.
So
yes,
fast.
like 5 and 6, we start to sort of push the boundaries of that believability that we maybe would have had in the earlier books.
Sure.
But I'm glad you pulled this out, because in a recent chapter that we just covered, there are actually some interesting scientific explanations for things in the past that we've had to sort of hand wave away.
Still,
truth-saying being one of them. So there's this moment where Rebecca is thinking back on her partner, Shoal, who's a truth-sayer, explaining to Rebecca effectively how truth-saying works. And it's not magic. It is not some magical Bene Gesserit ability. Quote, "There is no secret," Shoal had said. "It's training and hard work like anything else. You exercise what they call petit perception, the ability to detect very small variations in human reactions." End quote.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much, because we kind of had an idea of truth saying, but it was kind of described in those first books as this, like, her words had a shimmering clarity to them and blah, and it's like, okay,
right,
that sounds like magic. Sounds like you're a wizard. But to have this character go, this is how you understand if people are lying or not. It's not magic. It's this thing that you practice.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Exactly.
We love that Frank used this idea of like, what if human capability was really explored?
How far can we push the human brain?
That's really fucking cool.
Right.
What is the end of human potential?
Yeah.
We love that. And then we get to the Bene Gesserit thing. I also wanted to really quickly, before we talk, I do want to delineate, there is the Water of Life ceremony that is the spice essence, and that is the breaking down of the sort of like barriers between people and the sharing and the communion. That's one thing.
Yeah.
The Bene Gesserit airdropping memories to one another is a different thing.
Totally different thing.
Totally different thing. Coincidentally, same ceremony in this Fremen siege. Unrelated technically to the Water of Life, but we see, obviously in this book and in Heretics, we see multiple times they're like, hey, do you just want to quickly like airdrop all of your knowledge and memories to me just in case?
Right. Taraza literally like bleeding out and dying airdrops her memories to Adrade, you know?
Yeah.
So, and there is like no explanation for how that works.
So I just wanted to delineate that. Also, just wanted to remind everyone, we don't have any evidence that Jessica ever had other memory. Like, there are so many fucking things about Bene Gesserit, other memory.
It is one of the loosest parts of the Dune series, for sure.
Yeah. So, Len, I want to say the good news is there's a lot of gray area within which we can play that Frank really didn't nail down.
Yeah.
The bad news is it's basically magic. Because, like, listen, if Frank did have an idea of how they transfer their minds, if they airdrop their minds to one another, if it was grounded in science, he didn't really leave us that many hints in the books that, like, makes it clear, oh, this is because people do X, Y, and Z. But that being said, we did want to pull actually some evidence from Frank's beliefs, because we think this actually gives an interesting dimension. You talk about what is scientific or like a natural explanation. Well, that's subjective, right? Like, we can agree on what science has deemed, but like, what is natural? People have got some wild beliefs about that, and we think this might give some perspective. So just for reference, here's some stuff we found.
Yeah. So here's a quote we want to start with. This is a letter between Frank and his literary agent, Lurton Blassingham, written in January 1964. Quote, ESP is
Hello.
one of my interests to the extent that I have done considerable reading on it in what I would call the quasi-scientific end of the field. And then a little bit later in the letter, Frank continues, quote, I'm what you might refer to as an agnostic where ESP is concerned. A doubting Thomas, end quote.
Doubting Thomas.
That's a cute turn of phrase. We got to bring that back.
We got to bring that back.
We got to bring Doubting Thomas back.
Yeah. I don't know how my friends named Thomas will feel about that. They're like, oh, what the fuck, man? I'm sure about a lot of stuff. And we're like, I don't know.
I don't know. There's a phrase that it's coming back. Doubting Thomas.
Kind of seems like you're not sure about things.
So we share this quote, obviously, because of the ESP of it all, right? The quasi-scientific of it all. This has come up a number of times in our research that we've done, for example, for our interviews with Frank Herbert series. This came up in our conversation recently with Alt-Shift X when we talked about our favorite quotes from the Dune universe. We have the impression that Frank likely believed in something beyond what had been scientifically proven in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and even what's been proven today.
Right.
Are we saying that he was like a full-on like sort of like quack who believed in telepathy and ESP and everything? No. And Frank himself doesn't say that, right? Doubting Thomas. Right. But it's clear that Frank had an interest in these things.
Yeah.
And was exploring these things, clearly doing some reading into them. And so I don't think it's a stretch to say that Frank may have treated ESP capabilities as just another thing that would potentially evolve within humanity over tens of thousands of years in this universe that he was creating.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, when we talk about like him being interviewed by McNally and him talking about predicting 52 cards in a row,
right? That story
multiple
he tells,
times, that story he tells. I think Frank was being very cagey about his beliefs. I want to say Leo Wiggins' opinion is that Frank full on fucking believed in like ESP and stuff like that, but was also acknowledging that like, there isn't proof of it. I can't declaratively say it. And I think he was conscious of his appearance as like a mushroom tending, organ living author of wacky sci-fi. I think he was doing preemptive damage control, going, I'm agnostic on the topic. And it's like he said before going back to his ESP journal of like day 700 of trying to move the glass of water. You know?
Yeah, I've been trying to tell Bev how much I love her telepathically for years. She's just not responding. She's not picking up on my telepathic signals.
She's leaving them on red. It's so rude.
Rude.
It's so rude. So I'm like, my opinion is I think Frank did believe in that stuff. And so, Len, I would say maybe along those lines, it's the same. Where Frank's going, hey, look, we have documented cases of humans being great at math, and we have documented cases of people doing blah, blah, blah. And we've got some like emerging examples of people having some ability to share their minds, to read minds. Maybe you could even give your mind. And I don't think that that's a crazy stretch. I just think what might be dissatisfying is if you don't believe in that stuff at all. If you're like totally hardline ESP's bullshit, that could be a little dissatisfying because you're like, I get hardline mathematics and logic and I get that stuff. I don't get the ESP taken to the nth degree. Yeah. But I think that's where he's coming from, and it might not be that different.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe he just believes that we have these sort of like seeds in us that will grow over the next 30,000 years.
That science hasn't solved yet. And maybe the Bene Gesserit have solved it.
Yeah.
20,000 years in the future.
All it takes is selective breeding and the Kolliker cramps section of the brain and spice.
Don't call it eugenics.
Don't say
that word. We don't say that word around here.
It's not selective breeding. We just don't like certain people. We're trying to get rid of them.
Wow. Now, one last thing I want to say here, and this at the risk of completely derailing us off into another thing.
Sure.
I just want to say I'd like to gently and lovingly push back on Len just a little bit, because I perhaps could argue that Dune is less sci-fi than a lot of other sci-fi out there and leans quite a bit into some traditional fantasy elements.
Sure.
Sort of speaking purely from a literature standpoint. But I think that for now, that's where I'll leave it. That is a can of sandworms and perhaps a discussion for another day. But I think it could be argued that Dune is not as sci-fi as you might believe.
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah, let's table that conversation. Let's robo-table that conversation.
Yes, I can sense you ready to disagree with me, but yeah.
Well, it's because also like Crayola, all of the color names that we know are just marketing. It's like what is sci-fi but a place to put the book on the shelf, and ultimately, it's an examination of humanity. What he doesn't,
but just like holding it up to something like Three Body Problem, it's then we're talking like different ball game. We're not in the same sci-fi ballpark.
But then you hold it up to well-known fantasy things, and it's like alternate universe. It's not this universe, and there are these extra powers that people are throwing like lightning bolts at each other.
Yeah,
and it's like that's also not happening. So it's not cut and dry.
Right. It's the age-old Star Wars debate as well. Is Star Wars fantasy? Is Star Wars sci-fi?
Turns out it's just mostly
make it
bad.
Enough to make it sci-fi. Holy shit! Wow.
Although I did start watching Andor, and holy shit, what a great.
Andor is one of the best TV shows ever made. Full
it's
stop.
So good. It's so good.
Yeah, full
and
stop.
It really emphasizes for me how bad most of the rest of Star Wars is.
It truly puts the rest of Star Wars to shame in a way that is like astonishing.
I say that somewhat lovingly. Like, I really enjoyed even the final Star Wars movies, but I'm like, look at what they could have been. Look at how good they could be.
Oh yeah, Tony Gilroy was like, hold my fucking lightsaber.
hold my cantina slop. This is my McClunky.
Well, Len, thank you so much for the great question and for letting us geek out a little bit about ESP and the sci-fi of it all.
Yeah. All right. Up next, we have a lovely message from patron Anatar. And Anatar writes, quote, Tolkien's and Herbert's imaginary worlds are often compared to one another, but only Tolkien's has become a subject of serious academic study. I have some theories for why this is the case, but I'm wondering what yours are. End quote.
Love it. You know what? Love to pit my favorite universes against each other. Deathmatch.
Yeah.
This is actually a great question. And once again, I feel like we're just saying this for every question in today's episode. Once again, this could be like a whole episode onto itself.
Yeah.
And maybe someday it will be. So here maybe is my abridged thoughts. Here's like the ChatGPT summary of my thoughts.
I'll also say quickly, I think Dune is studied, especially the first book, is studied in some serious academic settings. Not as widely. So I'm just caveating the sort of like comparison.
Yeah.
Obviously, Tolkien takes the cake in being more studied.
Yeah. There is a mountain of Tolkien study and there's a hill of Dune study, right? There is still
fair.
study.
Yeah.
But I wanted to share what I think, this is purely my opinion based off my own knowledge and my own research. I wanted to share 3 reasons that I think Lord of the Rings has reached the heights it has when it comes to such serious academic rigor versus Dune. So to break it down, 3 reasons. Number 1, I think sci-fi was considered an unserious genre when Dune was published. We've talked about this a lot, right? Pop sci-fi and the move away from it. Thanks to Asimov, thanks to Frank, thanks to other incredible writers of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And what's kind of sad is like, to some extent, you could argue that even today, right? Science fiction is not taken as seriously as other storytelling genres across all mediums, right? Like, think back in recent memory to the number of sci-fi books or TV shows or movies that get recognition from prestigious awards like the Academy or the Emmys, or prestigious writing awards. Like, sci-fi is typically not a genre that is being celebrated in the same way that other genres are. And this sort of bias, you could call it, this like sort of prejudice against sci-fi, is even worse in academic circles, right? Like, maybe some critics have come around, maybe sci-fi is taken more seriously, it's given more attention in some corners of the media or the internet, but academia is still sort of behind the ball in that. And fantasy has also faced similar challenges, but I think fantasy is an older genre. The staples of fantasy go much further back than sci-fi. And Tolkien's writing style in particular, the way he built this very complex mythological world, based on my research, was pretty quickly accepted and celebrated, not only by critics, but also by academics of the time. So his work was like very quickly legitimized by thinkers, capital T thinkers. So that's reason number one.
I'll also point out, even Frank, in many of his interviews in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, was resistant to the idea of sci-fi being dragged into the classroom. He was like, God save us if sci-fi becomes academic. It's like this was an attitude. And even some of the authors were like, I don't want that. This is a genre I'm playing within, and I don't want it to become this thing that's like picked apart or whatever, know? So I think it's also worth calling out that like some of the people behind the wheel driving the genre were like intentionally being okay with being away from it.
Yeah. And that attitude, I think, certainly over the decades has shifted a little bit. And science fiction, definitely a genre that is examined much more closely today than it was back then. Argument number two that I want to make here is that Tolkien was a prolific writer. My man was writing a lot. And what's important to consider is that he left behind a treasure trove of notes and fleeting thoughts and literally unfinished stories that he started, then dropped for a few years and never came back to. Others that he started, picked up again a few years later. There is so much information left behind by Tolkien in regards to Middle-earth, in regards to the universe that he created there. Frank Herbert did not leave as much behind. He did not leave that same kind of treasure trove of writing and thoughts and notes for others to pick up after his death and for others to dig through and compile and reconstruct. As far as we know, as far as the legend goes, there's a floppy disk of Dune 7 notes of the seventh book, and perhaps some written notes and documents in a lockbox that was left after his death.
Yeah.
Tolkien's shit would not have fit in one lockbox, to be clear, what he left behind. So I think that's argument number two for why Lord of the Rings has been treated this way academically. There's just so much material to go through. There's much more to give attention to. And then finally, point number three that I want to make here, I think we all see this one coming. The stewardship of Tolkien's estate after his death in 1973 was left in the very capable hands of his son, Christopher Tolkien, who was deeply, I cannot emphasize this enough, my research, I'm pretty Lord of the Rings obsessed, but even my research today was pretty insightful. He was obsessively passionate and protective of his father's work. Really did not want, he famously hates the Peter Jackson movies.
Oh my God. So funny.
Because he is so protective of the works. He doesn't think his father's works was ever meant to be adapted to the screen, and he hates that it ever did. And I think even more than that, because I think there are people who are just as passionate about the Dune universe out there. I think the more pointed criticism I have here, clearly for Brian Herbert, is that Christopher Tolkien never once in the 40 years he ran his father's estate before he stepped down, never once wrote his own additions to the Lord of the Rings canon. All he ever did for 40 fucking years was compile and complete and celebrate his father's original writings, his father's notes, his father's unpublished work. And he was very clear. If you ever read the Silmarillion or the Unfinished Tales or any of the other books in the Lord of the Rings canon, Christopher is so clear where his father's writing stops and where his additions and interpretations begin. Mm-hmm. And he's so delicate about that because he never wanted there to be confusion on who was writing in this universe and who was the authority on the canon. It was always J.R.R. Tolkien. It was never Christopher Tolkien.
So he didn't write a sequel book where Pippin actually says that Mary wrote the first book.
Don't even write
and then actually the first book was not actually written by anyone.
This into existence? My God. No, he never did. And look, obviously I'm I have a chip on my shoulder about this because this is exactly what I think Brian did that damaged the Dune universe so much. He sought to write his own editions with his own ideas based off of what few notes may or may not exist. And that has now made the Dune canon incredibly messy. Yeah. And I think to its detriment.
Tom Bombadil was actually Gandalf the whole time, and you never saw them in the same scene, and that's what a twist. What a twist. Does it break the universe? Yes, but isn't that fun? Listen, snide comments aside, I want to say, even if you love Brian's books, even if you like them, even if you just kind of passively enjoy them, wherever you fall, it is undeniable that the fandom is split. It is so undeniable that there are people who are like, fuck Brian Herbert, and then there are those people going, hey, leave him alone, he writes okay. And that's like the two sides. And the fact that there are even two sides is really regrettable, because if you just imagine a hypothetical alternative universe where Dune was spectacular until 86 and then Frank Herbert passes away, then there's a quiet period, a couple of licensed video games come out, 92, 93, and then, holy shit, some prequel books that everyone's on board with. Everyone loves them. Some sequel books. People love them. They're great. Wouldn't that world be fucking different? Wouldn't we be talking about Dune a lot more as a society if it was this building momentum instead of this fracturing point where like 60 to 80% of Dune fans are like, don't even look at those books. Those books don't fucking exist. Pretend they don't exist. They suck. They're awful. Like, people write us like we're creating this vitriolic take. We are not. It's been around.
If anything, we're bandwagoning. This take has been around before we were born, to be clear.
And I like to think that I'm pretty measured, because like I will talk about the specific things that rub me the wrong way in the books that I've read, and people are like, it's based on notes, dog. And I'm like, okay, you're just saying that. You're not basing that on any like.
Yeah. To be clear, Christopher Tolkien had the receipts. He showed his work. He said,
like, look at those. He said, look,
notes. My father wrote this. The Silmarillion, what you're reading right now, these are not my words. These are Dad's words. I'm just printing them.
What a fucking concept. I want to see the notes.
Show me the fucking notes.
It's that simple.
How do we subpoena the notes? What government agency do we need to lobby to subpoena the Dune 7 notes?
I mean,
yeah.
So I think I just want to extend that olive branch, as I often try to do, to folks on either side of the divide whenever we bash Brian. Just imagine this alternative universe where everyone was on board with everything. And that's never the universe. Again, I'm sure there are Tolkien fans who don't like Christopher's work, but like, still, it just makes such a difference in the fandom. Because I also know there are a lot of people who went from reading the first Dune book to going, oh shit, there are books that happened before this. I'm going to go read House Atreides, and oh, it's not really for me. And then they didn't read the rest of Frank's work.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, there's more damage that's been done. And I think going back to Anatar's original question, this is what feeds into the fact that Tolkien's work has been respected for so many years and has been the subject of serious academic analysis and other writings, right? Analysis of Tolkien's writings that have really only added to the fabric of this already truly incredible world that J.R.R. Tolkien created. And the reason we have that is because of the steward. I really give so much credit to Christopher Tolkien for the stewardship of his father's work and legacy and estate after his father passed. And I do think that plays a big part into why Dune is not at the same level, on top of the other things we talked about, the sci-fi of it all, and just the amount of information that was left behind. Frank sadly did not leave behind dozens and dozens and dozens of other Dune stories that he had never gotten around to finishing, like Tolkien did.
Would have been so good.
Great question, though. Thanks for letting us geek out about that, Anatar.
Indeed. Well, we're going to take one last quick break. Don't go anywhere. When we're back, we've got some fun Dune, kind of off-topic, wacky, crazy questions. Stay tuned. I mixed all those words together. That was great.
Welcome back, folks. Let's round out today's episode by veering off the golden path just a little bit and getting into some more what-if and off-topic discussions here, just for fun.
Nice.
Let's start with a question from patron C.S. Walters.
Sure.
Walters writes, quote, "What piece of lore would you like to have seen expanded upon? And from that, how would you expand upon it?"
Oh, good Lord.
Oh, fun.
Kicks off a 6-hour conversation. Well, get us started, Abu. What do you... Yeah. What piece of lore and how would you expand? Wow.
I mean, truly, I don't even know that 6 hours is enough for me to answer this question.
Yeah.
This is a fun question because I think about this a lot. I probably think about this too much. And I actually personally have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of thoughts on this. For the sake of time, because we're trying to wrap this episode up, I'll share just one idea today, just a couple of quick thoughts. I personally think that the roughly like 9,000-ish year period from the formation of the Spacing Guild and the rise of the Corrinos and the formation of the Imperium as we know it in Paul's time, up until 10,191, Paul's time, I think that period of time is so fascinating. And I think there is endless space to fill that time with stories of politics and intrigue within this Imperium, right? It is literally an Imperium that is young and new and finding its footing to being an Imperium that is 10,000 years old when Paul shows up on the stage.
Yeah.
So much can happen in that time. So many incredible stories can be told. So to answer Walter's question about how I personally, hypothetically, would tackle that, my initial idea would be to create something title pending, but like something like Tales of the New Imperium or something like that. And this would be a book that covers different significant events along this timeline in that 9,000 year period between the Foundation and Paul. And these stories, these like short stories, would be interconnected either through characters, right? You might see like related characters in stories, either through movements. One movement might cause another movement in the next story, short story to take place, or simply through just like big ideas and themes. Ecology, politics, power, control, all of the big themes we know and love in Dune are sort of the glue holding these short stories together. I imagine this very much as like a Ted Chiang short story collection mashed up with the way the first Foundation book kind of jumped through different time periods, but they were all sort of interconnected.
Yeah.
I imagine it's kind of like that, covering the birth of the Imperium, the birth of the Corrino throne, all the way to its fall, the rise and fall of the Corrino Empire or something. Mm-hmm. So what types of stories specifically would I want to tell in this 9,000 year period? I went through the encyclopedia. I looked at the timelines. I looked at what's canon and what's already established. And there's very little established for how much time this is. 9,000 years is a long time. There's like only a couple of significant events that are canon, basically. So there's a lot of room to play with. Some canon events that I would want to touch on. One would be, I'd want to tell a short story that is a recollection of the first major rebellion against these new Corrinos who've taken the throne.
Hell yeah.
And I would tell this short story through these like incomplete scraps of secret communications and like personal diary entries of the rebels who ultimately end up losing the rebellion, because we know the Corrinos rule for 10,000 years.
Also, what a great way to demonstrate the power of the Sardaukar, actually show them shutting shit down.
Yeah. Touch on the Sardaukar, touch on the idea of rebels, right? Like get some themes from like Siono Atreides in there about the idea of like rebellions and how necessary they are, how they change, how they evolve, how all rebels are bureaucrats. Bring some of those ideas from God Emperor into a short story.
Bit of fan service, name a character Kutag.
Exactly.
Give us what we want.
Yeah. Another short story I'd want to pitch here is I would want to track the Zen-Sunni migration, which is a big event that we've talked about on this podcast. This is a canon event that takes place in this time. But I'd want to track the migration through the personal stories of multiple members of a single family. So like a multi-generational story, maybe have like 3 or 4 short stories, and we jump to a different generation in each story that reveals a different part of the migration. There, I'd want to really touch on ideas of displacement, displaced peoples, displaced cultures, and also kind of weave in some of my own personal experiences of like the immigrant story, right? Like what happens when your family's history is lost because of events or displacement or immigration, and how that may have affected the Zen-Sunni wanderers who ultimately become the Fremen on Arrakis. So I think that would be a couple of stories I'd weave in. This one I think would just kind of be fun. This one maybe would be a very short one, maybe a little more comedic focused. I'd want to write about the first face dancer who shows up in the Carino court.
Okay.
Because that happens really early on. I think that would be fun. I think it would be interesting to tell the story from the perspective of the face dancer and kind of explore like what a face dancer model V 1.0 looked like. You know, did this face dancer have all the powers? Was it fully subservient? Was there any rebellious inner nature of this face dancer? I don't know.
He's like, behold, I'm the emperor. Everyone's like, if you squint, you can kind of see it. Like, yeah, he's kind of got the that's an okay, like 6 out of 10.
Yeah, weave in some intrigue here, I think, as well, because he's clearly being sent to the Carino Palace as a spy, but he's being sent as an entertainer. So I think there'd be a lot of fun to play with the first face dancer in the universe.
I love the idea of him being really bad. That's just so funny to me. It's him being not good at it. It's like, no, exactly. We're still figuring out this whole intrigue thing. He's like, I'm the emperor. What are your secrets? Oh, that was too forward. I apologize.
That was
I was joking.
I'm workshopping that one. What are your secrets? What are the nuclear codes? I mean, what?
It's my favorite song. Tell me your secrets. I mean...
Okay, last one. One more I'd want to include in this collection of stories in the Tales of the New Imperium. I recently watched The Penguin, which is a truly incredible show. Everyone needs to watch that.
Yeah, I need
So
to.
I've been inspired. I'd love to tell like a mobster-style mob family story of a house miner and their epic rise and fall through the illegal drug trade of Ilaka and Samuta.
Hell yeah.
Real Italian mobster vibes.
Yeah.
And watch this family's like come up. Maybe they even reach the heights of a house major. But then just as they're at their peak, events take a turn and we see the beautiful downfall of a house that could have competed with the Atreides of the world.
It's like Peaky Blinders. They attract new enemies, a new caliber of threat and danger. Yeah. Hell yeah.
And I think there's some like interesting themes here to touch on. Like Frank liked to obviously talked a lot about government and societies and what's necessary to run them. And I do think sort of an unspoken rule of societies is crime is also an unavoidable part of society. And I think there are some ideas that I want to touch on here about war on drugs, drug trade, drug abuse, how people take advantage of that, how governments take advantage of that, how it's weaponized, and who ultimately suffers. Kind of explore some of those themes, but turn it into like a mobster style story.
Oh man. Yeah, some of the like very real things that have happened with like weaponizing substance abuse in like low income neighborhoods and like using that to keep people down, the distribution of like making government sanctioned Alaka centers in only the poorest of the Fremen neighborhoods to
there
keep
you go, Leo. Now you're cooking.
Oh,
now you're cooking that Samuta, baby.
No, give us more robo tables and Arismus. That's so much better.
So yeah, that would be my pitch, and that's how I would go about it.
Fire.
And you know, maybe I'm not the best equipped to tell all these stories, but I'd love to collaborate with writers. Like I actually think instead of going in a comedic direction, maybe my face dancer pitch could be written by a trans writer.
Oh, yeah.
Who could maybe touch on the idea of what the existence of a face dancer is when they haven't committed to a singular gender identity and how that affects their experience within the Imperium. I'm not the person who can write that story, but maybe there's a trans writer who'd want to work with me on telling that story. So, I think there'd be a lot of room to play with here, and you know, a nerdy podcaster can dream someday, maybe.
Someday.
What about you, though? I'd love to hear your ideas and your response to Walter's question here.
Oh, sure. Yeah, listen. Every one of your ideas is fire. Like, that's great.
Thank you.
I want them all. I want right now, please. For me, I kind of went there are those like the temptation of the big pivotal moments is huge. Like again, I'm a huge fan of like Ampalaros. I'm a huge fan of the invention of the Holtzman engines and like not quite understanding that. Give me like an Enigma style, you know, like science crime solving. I saw a great TikTok commentator maybe a couple of years ago was saying it's great to have movies like The Martian and movies like Enigma and movies like Sherlock Holmes that epitomizes the idea of the problem solver who solves problems by being brilliant. So I'd love to have stories like that in the Dune universe. Like give us that Norma Sidva solving faster than light travel. Like, give us those stories.
Competency porn. I love it.
Competency porn, dude. Just seeing people being good at stuff. That's hot. I love it.
It's hot.
It's so hot.
I'm sweaty.
I'm sweating already thinking about it. But I will say the thing that really dominates, like if I had to choose one, I would choose, and maybe this is hot on the heels of me watching Andor, but I would really love a flushed out, gritty, human story on Arrakis following, you guessed it, smugglers.
Let's fucking go.
I love smugglers. Like, set somewhere between Dune and Dune Messiah. I want to follow characters who, like, their whole system, the system within which they operate, has been fully upturned. The uncreased Jordans have been claimed by a new fucking off-world or whatever.
Yeah.
But they have bills to pay. They have shit to get done, and it doesn't involve them. I don't want to see a named character at any point in this fucking show. I want to see bars. I want to see restaurants. I want to see back alleys. I want to see deals done with not bald Ixians going big boom. I want to see proper, like really well-written, grounded human characters in this setting just living. I want extort the water salesperson for a bit of extra water because you're running low on your supply and you think there's a great big store. Like that kind of day-to-day shit. I want to see it. I want to see the day-to-day life of the common folk so that realistically, I'm like, I know I'm not going to be a fucking lord or lady in this universe. I'm going to be a commoner. Yeah. Show me their lives. I want to see how much that sucks, you know? Akin to Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow, I was thinking expanding the idea. So that's my pitch, right? Like following the smugglers, nice, tight, single novel. How about this? Same timeline. Now we're following a banker. Again, no named characters. Brand new characters, brand new world, make me care because they're written well and they're people we care about.
Yeah.
What happened to the bankers in Arrakeen when Paul took over? What happens to that infrastructure? And then how do they have to worry about their family? Are they going to be raided by Fremen fanatics who are bloodlusting and just killing indiscriminately? What's happening? I want to hear about that story. I also want to hear about the water sellers. I want to hear about a Fremen who's not off on the jihad. He's got heel spurs or some shit that made him like opt out of the military service. Right. Or show us a really detailed story of a Fremen who's out on the jihad, never encounters Gurney or Stilgar or Duncan or Paul or fucking anyone. I want just a guy trying to survive, seeing we think about, I think it's like Otham talks about the waters, seeing the ocean, the baptism, the salt water, drinking it, becoming sick.
Yeah, imagine.
Give us that whole fucking story. That little passage is so impactful, I think, because it's so grounded in the human experience. I want that. Just want a whole book of that. So give me like 6 different novels, all following the same like 2-year time period, and I'll be so happy. And it can just be Anyway, that's
And I love the time period you've picked. I have always been fascinated by the everyday upheaval that Paul's rise to power would have on the Imperium. Yes. And that 12-year time gap that we have between book 1 and 2 is just, I'm like salivating at the possibilities there based on what we know of the Imperium, like we talked about earlier, that bureaucratic structure we laid out earlier, and how that just all gets blown up. Who does that affect? How does it affect them? What is Paul's rule? What is the perception of Paul's rise to power for the everyday person on a planet that may or may not be directly affected by that change? That to me is endlessly fascinating. So I love the time period you've chosen here.
Again, I think these stories, they mean something to us because they are in some way relatable. Again, that's the way the storytelling works. And we see little bits of ourselves in these moments. And it's like, it's so obvious, but give us the stories about the people. And it's like, you can humanize the lords and the ladies, but why not just tell us the stories of the common folk? Like, I'm curious. I want to know about them.
Yeah.
So,
great pitch. I love
but
it.
Here's a non-serious one. Give me a slice of life comedy about Clairby, the bus driver, best character in goddamn Dune. Love him. Did he have a driving test? Did he audition? What was his? How did he get a permit? When did he move to the planet? Tell me everything about that
we
fucking
need the
man.
Clareby origin story.
Give me the
for
Clareby
sure.
everything. Just everything about him. I want to know. Anyway,
Yeah.
those
Tell
are
me
my
about
pitches.
his lovers.
How many humans or non-humans? Hey, big universe out there. How many things has Clareby fucked?
We need to know. I need that
We
Clareby
need
body count.
To know. It's up there for sure.
That body and or CPU count, I guess.
Whatever, you know. How many chair dogs does he have at home?
What a fun question. I love that. And, we do get asked this quite a bit in different ways. People have asked us, what lore stuff speaks to us the most and how we'd want to tackle it. It would be very cool to have the opportunity to tell these stories or to work and partner with people and tell these stories in some way.
Yeah.
Certainly
1,000%.
something that I hope we can make happen someday if the stars align. But for now, we can pitch them here on this podcast when we get questions from people like Walter.
Yeah, that's great. Well, up next, as a final question, Abu.
Yeah.
This is from John Curtis, the one and only John Body Shots Curtis. John writes, quote, "If you could have any writer write an original Dune novel,
Oh my God.
who would it be?"
Wow. This is sort of related to what we just talked about, I suppose. But gosh, I'm gonna choose to interpret, mostly to limit myself. I'm gonna choose to interpret John's question as any writer who is currently alive and active in writing, and even to limit myself further, I'm going to try and hone in further on sci-fi. I think there's a ton of brilliant writers doing amazing work out there, but we're also seeing some amazing sci-fi authors releasing some all-time great sci-fi books today. And so even with my guardrails in place, I had a very difficult time narrowing this down.
Yeah.
In my ideal world, if I were given the keys to the Dune castle, I would be reaching out to lots of different writers and letting them bring their own voice and style to the universe. Given the guidelines of stay within the canon, I think you find hidden gems by taking risks. And that means trying to go outside the wheelhouse of what has already been established in an IP. Doesn't mean you're always going to hit a home run. Oftentimes you're going to stumble and release a dud, but then you will get something like a Tony Gilroy coming in and literally destroying the rest of the IP by creating something so truly incredible that stands head and shoulders above everything else. And that's because Tony Gilroy, frankly, once you're done watching the show, you should read interviews on how that show came together. It's the most expensive Star Wars project ever made, and he was practically given a blank check from Disney and no script notes.
Oh, amazing.
In interviews, Tony Gilroy is I'd submit my Andor scripts to the execs, and they would just be like, yeah, man, whatever. We trust you. Do it. And that is how the magic happened. That is how we got fucking Andor. And because he is one of the most talented writer-directors out there. Anyway, moving on from Andor. To answer this question, here's what I narrowed it down to. I think two writers that I would love to see tell their Dune stories would be Adrian Tchaikovsky and Anne Leckie. Both of these authors, I think, have proven track records with creating far, 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 far future universes that are both familiar to the human universe we know today, but also in many ways completely unrecognizable. And specifically, I'm talking about Adrian Tchaikovsky's Children of Time books, which I loved, and Anne Leckie's Imperial Roch series, which I've read the first one of. I haven't gotten around to the sequel books yet, but the first one was really, really great. I think within these series, actually, both authors have also tackled big themes around politics and ecology and other ideas that I think fit neatly into the world that Frank has created, but also pair nicely with many of the themes that Frank himself explored in the original 6 books. And I'm confident that both Adrian Tchaikovsky and Anne Leckie could bring their own unique voice and their own unique stories to the Dune universe, something we've never gotten in Dune before, while at the same time staying consistent with the ideas that are at the heart of the story.
Yeah.
That are at the heart of the IP. So those are my pitches. Adrian Tchaikovsky and Anne Leckie. I would love to even just hear what they'd pitch
Yeah.
as a story set in Dune.
No kidding. Okay, we have our bucket list of people to reach out to.
That's true. What about you? What authors, creators, writers came to mind for you?
Well, I'll just say I feel so under-equipped to answer this question because I feel like the last 5 or 6 years I've just been so focused on Dune, and then the things that I've read outside of Dune have been very light and like really not on par. Like I ended up reading the Fourth Wing books, and it's like, does Rebecca Yarros really lend herself well to Dune? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. And it's nothing personal about her. It's just different style altogether, different goals that she's trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So I'm really under-equipped to answer this question, but I have recently started picking up more outside reading. So hopefully soon I will have a better answer to this question.
I think honestly you have great answers here.
I tried. So I named the obvious ones, right? I named Ted Chiang, although thinking about it, for a full novel, I'm not as sure because I like Ted Chiang's.
His strengths are short stories.
His short stories are phenomenal. So I would love a short story collection from him, not necessarily a full novel. Andy Weir is great. I love his books. I love his approach. He does lean much harder sci-fi, so I don't know, again, if that's a good fit, but I like his books. I like his words, Magic Man. He's great.
Yeah.
Also, Liu Cixin, the author of Three Body Problem, also excellent. Great handling of language. All of them tell really deeply human stories within this like broader context of really extraordinary, fascinating worlds. If you can write a book like Three Body Problem, you can write a book in Dune easily. But I think going away from sci-fi just a little bit, because to the earlier question about whether or not it's like even sci-fi or fantasy, or like where does it sit?
Yeah.
I would say John Langan, who wrote a 2016 novel called The Fisherman. So The Fisherman is a sort of like horror thriller story about someone who's recently widowed. His wife passes, and dealing with trauma, he starts fishing. But he and a buddy who bond over that trauma end up going fishing together in a place that may or may not be a rift to like an extra dimensional Lovecraftian horror universe.
Okay.
And a whole third of the book is like early Dutch, German, European settlers in the like New York Hudson Valley, and there is like a Lovecraftian guy pulling some bullshit, and it's like
I love
fucking
this.
Cool.
I also kind of love that this is set in New York. I'm kind of a sucker for that. Yeah,
it's kind of sick. It really defied a lot of my expectations of like what you're allowed to do in writing books. You know, it's almost like a play: first act, second act, third act. It's got the Lovecraftian horror. It's got the horror, the really human pain of losing someone and trying to be okay with it in this incomprehensible tragedy. Very Paul in Dune Messiah coded. And I thought his language was really accessible. It was very fun to read. The pacing was good. I like cosmic horrors. I think those fit within the Dune universe very well. So I think that's like really off the beaten path, but
I love it.
I think it'd be fun for him to write something like something that people barely encounter on some planet during the scattering, you know, something like that. Like that could be very cool.
I mean, imagine the horror stories you could tell about the Tleilaxu. It doesn't have to be about the core Tleilaxu worlds, but they have subsidiary worlds that they spread out to. Imagine the shit going on over there.
Or some like auxiliary Ixian techno like religion that like brushes a little too close to something that they get a sense of it and they go, we have to shut this down. And it's the person who decides to shut down the thing that's connecting to some other place. And they're like, I don't know. Our friend Warwick over there was speaking in tongues for the last 3 days. We gotta kill this program. That could be cool as shit, dude. Like that could be fun. So that was something that came to mind. Again, one of the few like really great novels I've read in the last 5-6 years. So another idea came to mind, and this is again off the beaten path.
This is a goated choice, by the way. I just want to preface this. I saw this in the script and I went, Leo, what the fuck popping off?
Yeah, so I was like, you know what I really fucking loved recently? That's just like the best. And so good and so transcends form and media and just makes me want to be a better person and like all these things. Frieren, the anime Frieren.
So good.
Not only is it a great animated thing with great voice acting and great audio and great all these things, just the core story and the themes explored and the characters are all so fucking top tier that I was like, okay, let me look this up. It's Kanehito Yamada. So Yamada-san wrote Frieren. The show, if you haven't watched it, dear listener, please do yourself a favor. Go watch it. Stick with it past the first 10 episodes. You'll be hooked, I promise. It talks about time. The show is deeply about time. And what does time mean? Finding meaning in living. What does it mean to live life if you don't have memories you've formed and connections and people that you've come to know? The potential of humanity. What does it mean to be human? And where's the strength in humanity? And where's the brilliance in humanity, especially looking at it from a wide angle of 1,000 years? And in all of those ways, I think that it really fits within the DNA of Dune.
Yes.
I would fucking love for Yamada-san to write a book about some long-lived character and their experience within the Dune universe. And like, I think that could be really, really, really cool.
Yeah. And we know we have long-lived characters, right?
We have a bunch of them.
Spice Melange, extended lifespans.
So fucking many of them. It'd be, think about, okay, maybe there's a little planet somewhere where based on like local religious beliefs, people opt out of life extension stuff. And someone's moved there and they have taken, and they are still taking spice. And so they live 300 years and they see 3 generations of people pass by. And what is that perspective? Give me that. As they reflect on, is life better on this planet or worse? What does it mean to live a third as long, but they have all of this joy and this love? I want to see that perspective. Or maybe they say, no, it's just legitimately better to be like immune to most poisons than to live 3 times as long. This fucking slaps.
Yeah.
This is great. Maybe that's the perspective, but I think that could be such a meaningful conversation to have, especially because, modern medicine continues to improve. We continue to solve big problems. We have new problems arising, but as longevity becomes more and more a thing, what does it mean to live more years? Is it good?
Yeah. I think another strength of Frieren, and I think a strength of Kanehito Yamada in the storytelling, is that Frieren exists within like D&D. It already sort of exists within an IP.
Yeah.
So Yamada-san is already capable of playing with an IP and really toying with it in very interesting and subversive ways that you don't expect.
True. Yeah.
I was hooked literally on the first. I don't think you even have to make it to like episode 5 or 10 of this anime.
Yeah.
I was hooked on the first episode of Frieren simply because the premise is the D&D campaign is over.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
That's where the show starts. The campaign is done. We're not watching a D&D campaign.
We beat the big bad.
We beat the boss.
Yeah.
And now it's day one after the boss. It's the now what? And I was like, holy shit. I thought this was just like a generic D&D show.
Yeah.
Or like a generic fantasy show set within a D&D universe. Countless variations of that exist out there, right? We've all seen shows like that. This completely flips that on its head in a way that truly hooked me right away. And I think proves that Yamada-san is somebody who can take an IP, understand it and its conventions deeply, and then tell you something you've never heard from that IP before.
Yeah.
And I think that would be very cool in the Dune space. Plus, I've been pushing for a Dune anime on this podcast for years now. So
that's so true, and that's so funny. So we'll have to email Yamada-san and see if he's game to write something in Dune. I'm like, hey, do you want to get sued by Brian Herbert? That sounds fun. Right?
Yeah, great picks. You're selling yourself too short. I think you've chosen some truly talented authors in the sci-fi space, but then just great storytellers beyond that too. And I think that's important. In order for the IP to evolve and grow and thrive, we can't just stay in our comfort zones.
I'd like to think that that's true. Get some fresh blood on the scene.
Yeah. Well, John Body Shots Curtis, thank you so much for that great question. Hopefully our answers are satisfactory. And we'd love to hear all of yours as well, folks. You're all readers. We know you're all readers in the audience.
Nerds.
You bunch of fucking nerds listening to a Dune podcast. So yeah, tell us about your favorite authors. I'm sure there's countless that neither of us has ever read who would also do a great job telling a Dune story. And we'd love to hear about them. Send us your recommendations. All right. Well, that wraps it up, Leo. That wraps it up for today's mailbag episode. An extra long one today, but I think there were just a lot of fun questions that we wanted to tackle. And so I think we had some really great conversations today. Thanks to our listeners.
Yeah.
Great questions.
Absolutely agreed. Now, this is part of our book club series. So, dear listener, now that you've heard all of these questions and all of these answers, we have some assigned reading for you. Do not read, definitely read chapters 16, 17, and 18. Or if your book is a slightly different version than ours, this is to the end of the chapter that ends on the quote, "The horde of Lampetus, venting emotions it had confined for many generations."
Ooh.
End quote.
Excited.
Hell yeah. Look at that generational trauma. The horde of Lampetus is like, my father never loved me.
You vent those emotions, Horde. You do it, girl.
Vent them. Yeah, do it. You deserve. Some tears are healthy sometimes, you know?
Sometimes. All right, folks, before we let you go, a couple of very quick reminders here at the end. Reminder number 1, the best ways to support us. You have a couple of options here. First and foremost, become a patron, patreon.com/GomJabar. Join our wonderful community, get access to our Discord, chat with us directly, join live streams of book club episodes, and get early access to future episodes and a bunch of other goodies. All of that for as little as $5 a month. That $5 goes a long way into supporting this show and making sure we can continue to make it. Patreon.com/GomJabar is your best way to support the show. The other way to support the show is to check out our merch store, GomJabarShop.com. Check out some great designs that Leo has come up with that we've slapped onto everything from mugs to hoodies to other stuff. GomJabarShop.com. Buy yourself something nice.
Indeed. Now, we also love to hear from you. So if your question didn't make this episode, or if you have a new question that our episode inspired, or whatever the case, email us, gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from you.
Yes.
Kind of whatever. Just send it to us. Say hi. We are behind in responding, but that is always the case. Do not take it personally. We will respond to you. A lot of the responses I get are, holy shit, I forgot that I emailed you. And honestly, fair. I am sorry, but I appreciate you all so much. So send us emails. We love to get them. And again, if you have questions, they can also be questions just about anything. If you have questions about what anime we're watching, if you have questions about our personal lives, what fucking ever, just send us an email. We love to hear them.
Yeah. Tell us how your Freerin watching journey is going.
Yeah. Tell us if you believe in ESP. Abu, do you believe in ESP?
I absolutely do not believe in ESP.
I don't either, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. I tend to lean very heavily on like what has been corroborated through independent studies.
Yeah.
If you have shown me that something's happened twice in the world and two different unrelated institutions have documented, I'll be like, all right, I'll lend you an ear.
Yeah.
But when it's like, hey, a guy did this once, I'm like, all right.
Right.
Cool.
Right. Yeah. I'm not an ESP believer, but look, I believe in magic. So if it's out there, I'm ready to be disproven.
Hell yeah. Jesus. It's the loudest tummy growl I've ever had. I'm hungry. Well, friends, there is no real ending. It's just the place where you stop the recording. But this podcast is always one step beyond logic. So help spread the word of Muad'Dib and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out the other shows on the Lore Party Podcast Network on loreparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. We're also on YouTube. Check us out there. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, whoever controls the podcast controls the universe. We'll see you on the golden path.